Danny Boyle and Alex Garland have floated the idea of making a third 28 Days Later movie for many years. Oscar winner Cillian Murphy, the original star of the film, which made him a household name, expressed interest in returning. Every time I bump into Danny or Alex, I always mention it because I showed it to my kids some Halloween about 4 or 5 years ago and they loved it, he says. Garland, who wrote the original screenplay, finished a draft for the sequel, which was originally titled 28 Months Later. Boyle, the director of the original and who returns for this sequel, said he loved the original draft but it never felt like the right time to produce it. The second film in the franchise, 28 Weeks Later, was released in 2007 with an entirely new cast and crew, although Boyle and Garland remained as executive producers, with the latter adding additional input to the script. The filmmakers attribute Hollywood's obsession with IP as the sole factor behind their sequel being greenlit by Sony and Columbia Pictures. Thanks to the recent zombie-related hits, like the greater The Walking Dead franchise and The Last of Us, they were able to secure the funding for the film, which was retitled to 28 Years Later to represent the actual length of time it has been since the previous film the two worked on together. In fact, this is the first movie as part of a planned trilogy of sequels with the second film, 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, directed by Nia DaCosta, already in post-production. Spoiler alert! Cillian Murphy officially returns to the franchise. His return in 28 Years Later not only reunites him with Boyle, but also marks the first time a character from the original film has reappeared in the franchise. The 2007 sequel, 28 Weeks Later, introduced an entirely new cast, featuring Imogen Poots, Rose Byrne, Robert Carlyle, and Jeremy Renner, largely because the original actors were unavailable at the time. Now, with Murphy riding high from his Oscar win for Oppenheimer, his comeback as Jim is both timely and unexpected, adding star power and continuity to the series. His return also opens the door for Boyle and Garland to address the ambiguous ending of 28 Days Later. That film concluded with Jim, Selena, played by Naomi Harris, and Hannah, played by Megan Burns, trying to signal a Finnish jet for rescue after surviving another 28 days in isolation. While their message is seen, their ultimate fate was left unresolved, especially in light of the expanded chaos depicted in 28 Weeks Later. When the first trailer of the film dropped, many fans thought they'd spotted Murphy in a very unexpected role. In the clip, a group of zombies is propped up, like scarecrows, with one bearing a striking resemblance to Murphy. However, the team behind the film quickly debunked the idea, saying that the zombie is played by newcomer Angus Neil. He was talent spotted by Boyle, who was struck by the art dealer and model's distinctive looks. Danny told me he'd always had me in mind for the role, so we met up, hit it off, and I agreed to take part, said Neil. Who can blame the fans, though, for thinking it was Murphy? Especially after Sony Motion Pictures chair Tim Rothman said in an interview that Jim would be back in a surprising way and in a way that grows. Nowadays, cinema-quality digital cameras are everywhere, although they aren't always small or compact. However, Boyle managed to do something unique for 28 Years Later. He used a bunch of adapted iPhone 15s, making the $75 million Hollywood thriller the biggest movie to date to be filmed with smartphones. Fans of the series know that Boyle and cinematographer Anthony Dodd Mantle have consistently upped their tech with each film in the series. The first film, 28 Days Later, was filmed with an innovative for the time digital camera, the Canon XL1. It was also the first Hollywood film to shoot with it. That decision was made to mimic the look of found footage films that became popular in the early 2000s. His decision to use iPhones for the sequel was to modernize the look of the found footage aspect. But Boyle and his team also thought they'd benefit from the unease that the first film created about the speed and velocity of the way the infected were depicted. Boyle and Mantle didn't stop at simply using iPhones for a few shots. They pushed the technology much further by designing custom camera rigs, including one particularly ambitious setup featuring 20 iPhones mounted side by side. Along with these, they utilized a mix of gear such as body-mounted cameras, sensors, drones, and other tools to enhance the film's sense of movement and immersion. Several iPhone-based rigs were employed throughout the production, with configurations ranging from 8 to 10 and up to the 20-camera array. The crew also used rigs with 8 cameras and another with 10. The smaller they were, the easier they were to carry. Boyle mentioned a standout moment in the film that uses the 20-camera setup, There's a really striking shot in the second half where we use that 20-rig camera. It's quite graphic, but it's a wonderful shot that uses that technique. And startlingly, that kind of kicks you into a new world. He referred to this method as their version of poor man's bullet time, a creative workaround to achieve a visually dynamic effect without a massive budget. Having that many cameras shooting at once means that in editing, it was easy to pick out the specific perspective and shot that's different from the rest. It can also be used to time slice and switch between cameras during frantic action scenes. What makes 28 Years Later stand out among other iPhone shot films, like Sean Baker's Tangerine and Steven Soderbergh's Unsane, is the sheer scale of the production and the high-end customizations used during filming. While those earlier projects earned praise for their inventive use of mobile technology in indie filmmaking, Danny Boyle's latest entry into the 28 franchise pushes the concept into blockbuster territory. To achieve a cinematic look, the crew outfitted iPhones with specialized adapters that allowed them to use full-frame DSLR lenses, creating a level of visual depth and sharpness typically associated with traditional film cameras. These tools were essential in delivering the gritty, high-impact style that fans expect from the series. In another inventive move, the filmmakers mounted small cameras on farm animals, a setup cheekily referred to as GoPro, to capture dynamic, unconventional shots and add fresh visual texture to the story. Fans of the original film will remember the iconic scene in which Murphy roams freely outside of the hospital during broad daylight and walks across a very empty central London. In one of the hardest scenes to shoot in UK film history, Murphy walks across Westminster Bridge with Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament behind him. What is otherwise one of the busiest streets in London, filled with cars, pedestrians, vendors, and tourists alike, is dead. So for the sequel, did they recreate this scene? No, but they did use the UK, specifically Northern England, as filming locations. Let's dive a bit deeper. In May 2024, the production shot on Northumberland's Holy Island, a tidal island that is rich with religious history and known as a center of Celtic Christianity in the 6th century. This island was used to depict the film's island community, with other Northumberland filming spots like Hexham, Kielder Forest, and Planky Mill Farm used as the surrounding landscapes. In Rothbury, a town in Northumberland, production sought out extras of all ages for scenes depicting one of the towns in the film, with roles up for grabs including gardeners to wild swimmers. And when we say all ages, we mean literally all ages. An extras casting call was released asking for babies, the younger the better, to add to the mix. Candy Marlowe, the second assistant director, was in charge of the film's crowd scenes and looked to build up a whole community of people that consisted of various generations, ethnicities, and ages. She even sought out extras to fit the bill for ultramarathon runners, serious cyclists, and triathletes. But by far, finding babies was the most difficult challenge for the production. Marlowe and the casting team were ideally looking for twins who could role share, and they were specifically looking for newborns for key scenes. In July 2024, the production moved over to the counties of North Yorkshire and West Yorkshire in the region of Yorkshire. The scenic beauty of the villages of Melsonby and Redmire, alongside the cathedral city of Ripon, was used. Some scenes were shot in the surrounding Aysgarth Falls and the 12th century Fountains Abbey, adding another sense of realism and history to the franchise. More than just a sequel, 28 Years Later is a cinematic experiment, a film that bridges cutting-edge technology with raw, human storytelling. Danny Boyle and his team didn't just return to a beloved franchise, they reinvented how stories like this can be told. From smartphone cinematography to unconventional camera rigs, this production is as daring as the world it depicts. With Cillian Murphy reprising his role as Jim and a new generation of talent joining the fold, the film not only ties up long-standing mysteries, but sets the stage for even more unsettling, thought-provoking storytelling. It asks us to consider not just what survives the apocalypse, but who. Thanks for watching.